Genshin's UGC, or User Generated Content system, has been available for everyone to play for a while now after being initially revealed back in August, and it's in a really weird spot. The thing that most people have paid attention to and are critical of is how they've handled the monetization of the cosmetics, which is very understandable, seeing as how character customization is something many players were looking forward to, only for most of it to be completely locked behind paywalls. This is certainly unsatisfactory on many levels, but seeing as how plenty of content creators have already extensively covered that side of things, there's not much I can add to that conversation. Instead, I want to discuss the actual gameplay aspects of Miliastra Wonderland with regards to its potential as a game mode moving forward, from the perspective of someone who is interested in experimenting with creating my own games in it, for the sake of making unique videos. This can potentially lead to a lot of great free content for you to play down the line, and it's also important to know where the development resources for Genshin are being put into. Also, unless you have taken the time to use the workshop editor, which 99.999% of players understandably haven't, you'd have no idea what will even be possible for users to create in the first place. In this video, I want to explain the fundamental problems of Genshin UGC, but also explain why I'm still interested in how this system will continue to develop. First though, I want to answer a question that many have been asking, which is why this game mode is a part of Genshin to begin with, and not its own standalone game. I think this is a totally valid concern, because if you never plan on playing it, now there's a whole button and menu dedicated to it, and you have these extra characters on your roster that you can't hide. There's undoubtedly the business aspect of having it attached to Hoyo's most popular game, but it's pretty clear, especially in the workshop editor, that nearly everything inside consists of assets taken from Genshin that you already have downloaded. One aspect where this is clearly demonstrated is with enemies. After placing them down, you can adjust their behaviors exactly within the parameters that Genshin already specifies. Their default actions, their pathing, how they aggro and attack, the range at which they'll follow you and when they'll give up, it's all based on Genshin's existing code for enemy logic. Combine this with the giant list of objects you probably recognize from other parts of the game, the massive library of sound effects and background tracks, and then it starts to kind of make sense that if you already have these assets downloaded from what's used in base Genshin, that means you don't have to download anything when you open a custom-made user-generated experience, even for the first time. And that's a huge advantage to the pick up and play nature of browsing through random games, seeing as there's no drawback to trying one out for a little bit. This also means that although UGC definitely ends up contributing to the amount of storage Genshin takes up, it doesn't seem to be nearly as much of an increase as you'd think. At least from the files labeled with the codename Beyond, the only one with a significant size is the folder in audio assets at 3.5 GB on PC. That's not nothing, and maybe there are other files I don't know about, but considering how large the game is already, ranging from 100 to 150 GB on PC depending on what you have downloaded, it doesn't exactly seem to be this massive waste of disk space some are afraid it might be. Additionally, the Sandbox Workshop can have auto updates disabled in the launcher, and cache files can be cleared, so it appears they are aware this could become even more of an issue in the future, and could very well provide further options to disable downloads if it becomes much larger in size. Also, I want to clarify that yes, cache files do take up some storage, which could consist of random things like custom scripts, but it is not intended to fill up indefinitely, so you really shouldn't have to worry about clearing it unless you are trying to troubleshoot some kind of issue. For those who might be interested in making games, having Genshin incorporate its own browser right into the game also helps by making it much easier to share and have creations be discovered. Some have made the point that having UGC exist outside of Genshin would have allowed them to add in assets from other Hoyo titles like Star Rail, but I really don't think that's something they would have wanted to do anyway. Even if we ignore the potential conflicts that could arise from these games having very different visual styles, animations, and programming, having to download the assets from more than one game would make the storage issue exponentially worse. In terms of both business and practicality, having Miliastra Wonderland be an extension of Genshin makes a lot of sense, and the problems absolutely stem from other decisions, like what I'm going to talk about now. I have to admit that the way that the launch of Miliastra Wonderland was handled has negatively contributed quite a lot to how its gameplay has been received so far. It would have been majorly beneficial for Genshin to have put in the work to make a few very high quality official games just to get players started and give them an idea of the potential that UGC has. But I suppose they thought those devs might as well just work on actual events and whatnot, seeing as the games that were available on day one appeared to come only from very early Chinese beta testers who likely had varying levels of experience with game development. Some of these experiences are quite janky, to be truthful. I'm sure the creator of this billiards game put a lot of time and effort into making this, which I appreciate, but it unfortunately was the first game I played, and the controls and mechanics are just so clunky that it takes you out of the experience entirely. The lack of really strong games to hook players in has certainly led to players thinking there will probably be no good games ever, which I think is a rushed conclusion to come to, especially after playing some of the newer ones. However, that ultimately is Hoyo's fault for releasing the mode in this manner. It also does not help at all that translating the instructions from Chinese to English very likely led to games not being explained properly, making for even more confusion. But now that some time has passed, there are a few games that I genuinely enjoyed. For example, Puzzling Portals by Roshi, which, as you probably guessed, copies the core mechanics from the game Portal. The average time played by users is around 18 minutes, which is a pretty good indication it was actually worth playing since people didn't quit right away. There's 4 levels, gradually introducing more mechanics from the series to make for some pretty fun puzzles. At this point, you're probably thinking, well, if I wanted to play Portal, I'd just go and play Portal. I think that's a valid take, but you'd also be missing the point entirely. Yes, obviously the Genshin version has significantly less polish, very few levels, and suffers from Genshin's clunky movement where you can't change direction midair, leading to me falling off ledges an embarrassing amount of times. But the advantages are that it was free to play and didn't require me to download anything new, and those qualities are going to have different amounts of weight for different people. It's like how when I was in middle school, I'd go on Cool Math Games if we had free time in the computer lab, but if I was at home, I'd be on TF2 instead. Different levels of scope within games let them fulfill different purposes, and the extremely accessible nature of Miliastra Wonderland games for people who already have Genshin is what gives them value. I think UGC also provides value to aspiring game devs who want an easier entry point. While the workshop definitely has flaws, as game developers have expressed concerns over the difficulty of debugging, the documentation that likely suffers from things lost in translation, and the sometimes confusing node editor built for custom functionality, I was impressed by how easy it was to make the foundation for a game. Making a basic stage is as easy as placing down some blocks. Setting up the camera takes only a few clicks. You can edit all aspects of the UI for every kind of device. You can add support for multiple languages, and you can even test your unpublished game in multiplayer. Trust me when I say that doing such things in your own Unity project is not nearly this simple. And for the more complex stuff, as users figure out the learning curve, we'll get more video tutorials which will be much clearer in explaining concepts. Another interesting game I played was Teyvat Adventure Ruined Domain by this Chinese user. It has some roguelite elements where you upgrade abilities and fight bosses, and while the use of enemy spawns was quite well done, it really shined in being an example of how Genshin's combat can be expanded on. I particularly liked this skill that required a charged bar, allowing me to just fly around while swords rain down. The workshop actually provides quite a bit of upfront functionality for creating different classes and custom abilities with unique animations, perfect for this type of thing. The last game I want to shout out is Seasons of Volbrook by Ellenberger, because this one provides an example of just how large in scope these games can get. It seems to have so much content that I naturally couldn't experience most of it, but it appears to have a full yearly cycle with day and night, seasons, quest lines, farming mechanics, NPCs, unique animals, and more. The UI also stood out to me as there's a lot of information on screen, but it's not super cluttered like in some other user-made games. It's informative enough to allow you to manage your inventory and use various elemental skills to do tasks, which I was quite impressed by. You might have also noticed that this game has autosave for your progress. Certain capabilities like in-game save, leaderboards, and achievements are locked behind your creator level. Custom text on your UI used to be unlocked at level 3, but is now obtainable at level 2, and that only requires you to complete a couple quizzes with infinite retries, so it's basically available to everyone. I don't really mind the tiered system because the later features do require server data, so it is understandable that only experienced creators should have that kind of power. And if you're a beginner, these things probably aren't within the scope of your games to begin with. Also factoring in the fleshed out support ticket system and payout for creators in real money, it seems like workshop creators will be taken care of. So far, we only have games made with just a few weeks of experience in testing, so you can imagine the possibilities will only get more exciting as developers obtain more experience making things. In fact, there are many insane proof of concepts floating around, some of which haven't yet been implemented into any proper games, but demonstrate exciting possibilities. This is a pretty dang close recreation of Star Rail's Astral Express, only using existing Genshin assets, which just goes to show how creative you can get with environment construction. Someone turned cubes into a screen of sorts that plays different images in a sequence. This person made a straight up AK-47, and then proceeded to make a Minecraft Ender Dragon that has a meteor skill. There are also plenty of dedicated devs within the Chinese server who have made things like a tank MOBA, a tactical shooter, yes the map is Dust 2, a single-player action RPG, a third-person shooter tower defense, and a stealth assassination game. It would be a shame if none of these got ported over to the other servers because they do seem to be at a much higher level of quality, except one of them actually did. This Overwatch type game that was shown on Bilibili on October 25th was migrated as Escort Mission on November 7th, proving that popular games won't necessarily be region locked forever. And developer experience isn't the only thing that will push Miliastra Wonderland forward. More updates are expected to come, as we already know with the roadmap they've shown us. Technically, right now we're in the open beta, but soon we'll have open source components in Luna 3 for hopefully easier development. In Luna 4, we'll be able to use characters from the base game as well. I'm really hoping that means I'll be able to recreate Star Rail's combat using Genshin characters. Look, if Genshin's TCG has been consistently receiving updates since 2022, I think it's a safe assumption to make that they will be willing to support UGC with more features for a long time. So yes, I understand that Miliastra Wonderland at the moment doesn't have as much going for it as you might have originally anticipated, and the whole cosmetics thing is admittedly a disaster, but trust me when I say this game mode does have real potential. I don't think it's meant to overshadow the base game, but just be a neat additional part available. I hope you found this video to be interesting or insightful, and as always, thanks for watching.